A very warm welcome to this week's departmental seminar. It's great to have again a fairly sizable crowd joining us online for today's presentation. Today we'll be having Yifei Yang. Many of you will know her quite well from the department. If there are people from outside the department, to briefly introduce Yifei, she is a LSE fellow who joined us last year. She was coming from Singapore, the National University of Singapore, where she completed her PhD in public policy. Yifei is a comparativist, has an interest in comparative public policy, comparative education, is interested in governance issues, and in terms of policy domains, has a particular interest in education policy. And today's presentation relates to that. So specifically, she will be looking at teacher training in China and India, and looks at, in that paper, at the issue of capacity development and how it happened in these two contexts. But I shouldn't say too much, but leave it to Yifei to introduce that paper further, to contextualize it for you. In terms of our etiquette, it would be great to keep the microphones off at all the time unless you are speaking. We will have a presentation of approximately 40 minutes, and after that you will have the chance to ask questions. If you do ask questions, I think it would be then nice to, if you haven't done already, switch on your camera if you can, because this would give it possibly a more natural conversation than rather than talking to an image or just a name on a black screen. But that's from me for the time being. And Yifei, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much for the introduction, Timo. And I'm very happy to see a lot of old friends as well as new friends here. And also, like, this is my very first seminar that is done on a new laptop for a while, because my earlier one collapsed a few weeks back. So to begin with, I would also like to share my genuine appreciation to the department for organizing and offering such an excellent opportunity for me to share about my research on policy capacity and to see how it matters for teacher capacity development. So I think all these aspects is already covered by Timo in the introduction. So yeah, basically I got my PhD degree from the National University of Singapore, and also my overall interest is in comparative public policy and administration. So more specifically, governance and accountability, education and development, and also China and India are the three core pillars of my research interest. And I was fortunate enough to be able to combine all the three interests together in my doctoral dissertation, and which studies the governance and accountability of governance middle schools in Beijing and Delhi. So while doing that particular research, so the issue of policy capacity emerged as a very interest as well as a salient topic that deserves further and also more in-depth exploration, which in turn is what leads to this particular research, and in which so I teamed up with my PhD junior and a friend KJ, who is also here. And so basically, who is more, so KJ has more expertise on the issue of policy capacity and state capacity. So together we co-authored this paper, and the full title is Policy Capacity Matters for Capacity Development, in which we compared teacher in-service training and career advancement in the basic education systems of India and China. So like before I just continue to explain the remainders of this paper, which by the way, another good news to share with this audience is that now it's conditionally accepted by one of the top journals in the public administration field. So like maybe I just give the floor to my co-author Kidri a little bit for her to briefly introduce himself, and also because also as an acknowledgement, given the 8-hour time difference. So by now, like it's already 1 a.m. in Singapore. So Kidri, would you like to say a few words before I proceed?
Thank you, Bria. I'm very glad that everyone made it to this talk, and especially for those coming from Asia. I'm Kiji. I'm still a PhD student. I work on, similar to Bria's areas, more on comparative public policy. And this has been a great opportunity for us to collaborate on something that we both share interest in. And we'd be happy to listen to feedback and comments that you may have, especially for us to move forward with this kind of research. Thank you.
Thanks, KJ. So basically, I think what we are like mainly interested in this paper is to like really think about how does policy capacity matter for capacity development. So we use the shorthand for CD. And I think like the reason why this is such an important topic to explore is, I mean, to begin with, so policy and programs that are meant to address this kind of capacity deficits, whether it's for individuals and for institutions. So these are crucial for improving the public service delivery. But in order to ensure that the design and implementation of these CD initiatives are effective, it would also require a right mix of the capacities, like in order to do so. So I think like while this aspect or requirement is well acknowledged in the literature, but however, existing understanding on the capacity remains largely incomplete. It means that like some of the conceptualization would be very contextual and like very hard to be like generalizable, and also offer very practical policy suggestions. So in that case, we argue that a more generalized and also nuanced understanding would be needed in order to advance the capacity development literature. So in that case, we find that like maybe one way to meaningfully advance the CD literature would be by looking at the recent development in those the so-called policy capacity literature. So in that case, we take the definition from this very seminal paper, Wu, Ramesh, and Howlett, 2015. So we followed their definition for policy capacity as the set of skills and resources, and also the competences and capabilities that are necessary to perform policy functions. So in that case, it allows us to have a more comprehensive and also nested understanding of what policy capacity is. So briefly speaking, it can be meaningfully divided into like 3 interrelated aspects or dimensions. So to begin with, it is important to have analytical capacity, which means like generating intelligence and also commitment to evidence-based policy. And more specifically, when it comes to the capacity development, it means the ability of the government or provider to track the status and the progress so far, as well as identify the CD needs and also the gaps. And with this like needs and gaps identified at this stage, and then it is important to have what is called operational capacity, which means that like the government should be able to use appropriate policy instruments and also arrangements like in order to solve the particular problem. And in terms of the capacity development, then the requirement would not only be to it would not only be about the coverage, but also like ensuring this coverage in an inclusive, relevant, tailored, and also sustained manners. And finally, in addition to these two dimensions, the political capacity is also important in order to generate some alignment among the stakeholders that originally has the different goals and interests in order to garner the political support or at least mitigate the opposition. And in terms of the CD capacity development, it means to engage the various stakeholders and also especially those whose capacity are being developed. So in that case, this is the conceptualization that we rely on in this paper. And with this conceptual underpinning, and we want to systematically examine that in the case of teacher capacity building. So I'll now move on to the methodological part of the presentation to justify all the methodological decisions. So to begin with, I think the reason why we want to focus on teacher capacity development and also in-service training and career advancement in particular is that we notice that in the existing literature, which covers the capacity development, the focus is more on the organizational or system-wide level. So that's why so focusing specifically on teachers or the individuals would be a way to rectify the prior focus. And also, which in turn would link to the methodological choice that would be explained later, is that we argue and think that understanding how the CD programs works would be incomplete without examining the experience of the recipients who has received such kind of support and development. So with that in mind, on the broader level, so our focus is really the government middle schools in Beijing and Delhi. So as mentioned, in the empirical examination of this conceptualization is relatively exploratory in its nature. So that's why we focused on India and China, which has two of the world's largest basic education sectors, and also in the hope that given both the scarcity of empirical research on policy capacity in developing countries, and also the lessons generated from the research could be offer valuable insights to other developing countries facing similar challenges on capacity issues. So within these two countries, Beijing and Delhi are purposively selected as the starting point because compared with other complexities with both of our very large and diverse countries, so these two are relatively more comparable compared with the others. So what do I mean by that? So this table offers general overview about the education governance structure in Beijing and Delhi. So which you can see that there is a relatively parities over the two, whereas this would not be the case if, let's say, when we think about the rural areas, because rural areas in India, in addition to a set of administrative setup, because of the rural self-governance, so for those of you who has the background, so there would be a separate Panchayati Raj, which is the self-governance, which also kind of taken care of the elementary education in India. So that would be an extra level of complexity. And also, both Beijing and Delhi, within their own countries, are relatively resource abundant, for which the examination on the on governance and also the capacities would be relatively more meaningful. Whereas that might not be the case for the least advanced regions in both countries. And for them, the argument could well be that ensuring the resources and especially the input, the financial input and infrastructure input, would be more important, even though the governance and the capacity might still be a very important aspects as well. So that is at the broader level. And at a narrow level, so more specifically, one of the main tools that we used here is a teacher survey, and in which we surveyed 150 teachers and 80 teachers in Beijing and Delhi, respectively. So how are they selected? So again, it's essentially a logic of purposive sampling. So within each site of Beijing and Delhi, given a resource constraints, we're only able to focus on one district, but that was selected after eliminating a lot of the relatively incomparable parts of the two cities. And then in the end, we dwelled on North Delhi and also in Delhi and the Fengtai district in Beijing. So all the government middle schools, which is openly accessible on the government's official website. So we access that list and try to contact all of them. So in North Delhi, it means that all the 33 schools are contacted, and in Beijing, so we are able to reach 22 schools out of 24. So the survey is like it's like very structurally designed in order to explore how in-service training and career advancement are actually delivered and received. So we asked very detailed aspects about the providers, the frequencies, and also the format of training. And in terms of how it is actually received, so the survey itself contains the measurements of like a Likert scale. So on a scale from 1 to 5, what is your rate of satisfaction with regard to the training. However, like to further supplement the richness of information behind that, so we also followed up on each and every respondent in order to like tease out like what are the reasons behind the satisfaction and dissatisfaction, and also this allows them to offer us some specific and a very context-rich examples about the training and career advancement promotion that they have experienced so far. And so this is the breakdown of samples by all of these different demographic aspects. So finally, so basically, I think in addition to the teacher survey, we also used some supplementary measures. So basically, a separate survey is conducted on the principals whenever applicable, meaning that like whenever we got the consent of the principal to participate in their survey. And also we did expert consultations and also in the interviews with NGO workers, government officials, and also like it's supplemented by the secondary resources such as policy documents as well as the administrative data to tease out the other aspects of policy capacity. So basically, I think it's both a triangulation, especially in terms of between the survey and also the interviews and also the expert consultations. And also another purpose or dimension of this supplementary measures is that it offers additional information that is not available through this survey. So what do we find like using out all these measures? So I think from the survey itself to begin with, there is indeed quite a variation about cities in terms of both in-service training and career advancement. So for the in-service training part, and we can see that there are systematical differences in terms of the structure, meaning that like one is more centralized, in which the state authority is not only the overall planner, but also the actual provider of the training. Whereas the case in Beijing is like, it's more decentralized, in which the district and the school themselves are the major providers. And then in terms of the format, one is like having a more concentrated time, whereas the other is dispersed throughout the term. So the most frequent one could be on a weekly basis, and even the least frequent one could happen like at least maybe monthly or at least a few times during the semester. So from the survey itself, the percentage of respondents received training in Delhi, the number is below 70%, whereas in Beijing, it's almost the universal coverage. So if I remember correctly, there was only one exception of the teacher who doesn't receive the training during that time, is because so he was premium teacher within the career ladder, which means like really the top level of expert. So during that particular year, he was actually involved in a lot of like training provision, meaning that he was actually providing the training for others. And that was the reason why he didn't receive any training for that period. And in terms of like the percentage of respondents that felt training did not match the needs, so while in Beijing, still half of the teachers felt like that, but in Delhi, the percentage is actually even much higher. So in terms of the average satisfaction, you can also see that so the Delhi score is 1 full point lower as compared with Beijing. So this is basically like the counting of like whenever in a questionnaire they mentioned one particular provider of all the training tags that we cover there in terms of pedagogy, academic content, exam preparation, and then the student or classroom management, engagement with parents, etc. So for all these types of trainings, so like here is the count of the providers. And as you can see that in Delhi, it's mainly the state education authorities, whereas Beijing on the right hand, it's mostly the school level and the district level. And in terms of career advancement or the promotion, so I think, so the differences can also be observed on those dimensions. So maybe the thing that I particularly want to highlight is in terms of the promotion structure, right? So in Delhi, it is what I call the vertical structure, in which promotion would actually mean from teaching primary school to teaching lower secondary, and then higher secondary. So do note that actually, so for those of you who are following the policy reforms and development, so actually the very, very recent national education policy, what is called NEP 2020, so they actually talked about so there are a few words referring to this promotion structure, and we're thinking about like departing from this in a sense that like it's more like towards the horizontal path, which is like as you can see from the right hand side, which represents the case of Beijing, in which the expertise of a particular level of education, like it's separate, right? So promotion means that for both the primary school and the secondary school and the senior secondary, for all of them, it means from a level 3 to level 2 and level 1 before you become the senior teacher. So each and every level, the expertise is independent. So now we do see, at least on the policy document level, that there is an intention for India or like Delhi or India in general to move away from the past. But again, like there's no concrete details of how exactly to make such a move. So that is the picture about the variations that we observed for the CD for teachers. And now, how does that relate to the variation of policy capacity? So we will like apply our generalized framework and examine one by one. So to begin with, in terms of the variations of analytical capacity, so if you look at like how the teachers are consulted directly in eliciting their training needs and also the preferences, etc. So actually, neither Delhi or Beijing has a very high rate of consultation. So there is a question in the survey asked like whether you're consulted before regarding the training needs, etc. So, well, in Delhi, the percentage is 10%, whereas in Beijing, a little bit higher, but slightly above 30%. However, the key difference here is like really observed in terms of the involvement of experts to begin with. So while both Beijing and Delhi relies on the inputs of experts in identifying the training needs, etc. So the type of experts or really their embeddedness is quite different, as the experts in Delhi is mostly from the state level authorities, or like they could be the university professors as well. Whereas in Beijing, there seems to be a broader involvement of the expert teachers, meaning that teachers whose expertise are recognized through the promotion system, like by being promoted to the highest level, and then in turn feed back their expertise into the system. And even in terms of the university experts, which like whose consultation is also relied upon in Beijing, so they are more embedded in terms of. So some of the teachers that we interviewed, they are actually also serving as the what is called vice principal for teacher development. So as such, they will like go more frequently into the government middle schools, like into the campus, and then like discussing or consulting like with all the different local the stakeholders on the ground. So that's like one level of difference. And the other difference that we observe is like to what extent are they collecting informations from the lower level education authorities. So in Beijing, that we observed that they're at the district level authorities who, if you recall, were also the main training providers, but they are also quite actively engaged in as a source of information to the state level government, while still preserving a kind of like autonomy in terms of delivering their own training. That was not the case in Delhi, because even though there are similar apparatus for that, which is called the District Institute of Education Training, which is the DIET here. So DIET was conceived, I think, back in 1980s with the hope to like improve the responses to local needs. But at least in terms, in the case of Delhi, their role are quite marginalized in terms of just translating like whatever is devised and also provided by the state level government. So that is the variations of analytical capacity part. And in terms of the operational capacity, I think there are quite substantial differences observed in terms of training coverage, as already mentioned. And so within the number of below 70 that you've seen in Delhi, so actually one of the key stakeholders that are being neglected here is actually the guest teachers. Guest teachers, like meaning the teachers who are hired on a contractual basis, and also like whose salary is depending on their daily attendance and also daily delivering of the lectures. So even though the content of teaching and all the other aspects are like would remain the same. So for this particular group, actually more than 60% of the people that we surveyed did not receive the training like during this particular period. So in terms of the format and the frequency, so given that like Delhi's training at that time was like more concentrated during the summer break, so essentially what I characterized as a high-stake training here, meaning that like once you miss the training at a one particular point for whatever reasons, the next chance for you to catch up would not appear until the next training cycle. whereas the more ongoing nature of the training in Beijing would ensure that it's easier to catch up, or the stakes of missing one is substantially lower. And in particular, the training on academic content and also pedagogy is more frequent than student management or parental engagement, etc. So this is actually a feature, if not a deficit, that is actually observed in both Beijing and Delhi. And last but not least, so in Delhi, there is no targeted provision in which so everybody is receiving the same kind of training. And if we further link this back within the career advancement that we observed later, so meaning that if a newly promoted English teacher to teach the high school English from originally teaching, lower middle school chemistry, right? So this new English teacher would receive the same training as compared with English teacher, maybe have 10 years or more experience. So there's no differentiation on that. Whereas in Beijing, we do observe the more tailored ones, such as those towards the weak schools and others. And now, one interesting question to further explore is whether this overall difference is, whether this also reflects the overall difference of resources. So in order to shed some light on this issue, so we further look at the per student spending, as well as the parent-teacher, pupil-teacher ratios within these two sites. And there is indeed quite substantial variations, as you can see from the figures. But maybe the only thing that I would want to point here is that those figures can also be biased due to the different spending priorities and also the central local dynamics. And the other thing that I would want to highlight is that although the absolute number of those budgetary inputs differ, so there is actually a similar trend of budgetary increase across the board. So which in turn is an important dimension of a reflection of the political commitment. So the first message here in terms of the political capacity is that both can be categorized as strong. So for example, within the case of Delhi, the incumbent government actually allocated more than 20% of the budget to the education sector, whereas in Beijing, it is also seeing the largest growth of public spending on basic education from the period of 2010 to 2015. However, a key difference that is observed in terms of political capacity is the extent to which the stakeholders are engaged, or in terms of the stakeholder alignment. So in Delhi, actually one thing that is not observed in Beijing is that there is a heavy NGO involvement. And sometimes the NGOs are the only alternative providers of the training, meaning that if were it not for the NGO provided training, then the teachers didn't receive any kind of training of that year. So while this is a precious feature, but the key here is that there also raised some concerns and oppositions, especially from amongst the teachers, who thinks that NGOs is a substitute to the government role. So there is a lot of heated debates over there as well. And then secondly, there's also a lack of a regular and institutional platform to engage, especially the guest teachers, which is why when we further examine the dissatisfaction amongst the teachers to the training and to the promotion, so actually the exclusion of guest teachers is one of the main reasons behind that. Whereas compared to Beijing, even though the level of consultation to teachers are quite low, but at least there is this kind of multiple channels to eliciting the teachers' opinions, which in turn is conducive to building the trust. And also, the other feature is that the training is also more coordinated in a sense that whereas the school and the district are the main providers, but the government actually does play a supplementary role here in areas where the local levels aren't able to cover. So for example, like in catering to the weak schools, or the other instance we observe is that for those like very so the teachers who've already promoted to the highest level, in which the trainings offered by the school and the district were no longer able to suit their needs. So in that case, the training of that particular group is taken care by the state level government as well. So I guess within this systematical picture about both the variations of CD and the variations of policy capacity, so what is essentially we want to show is that the variations along these three dimensions of policy capacity actually can account for the perceived differences from the CD effectiveness in our cases of Beijing and Delhi. So within this nuanced picture, so we are also hoping to enrich the discussion. On one hand is on teacher in-service training, because it is so far as the empirical literature is concerned, has been like a mixed record so far. And so in that case, we add a more nuanced picture about how training as a CD measure works through the serial lens of policy capacity. And I think finally, the policy implication or takeaway, if you wish, is that without understanding and then catering to the needs of the targets of the city initiatives, and then what is meant to be supportive are likely to be disappointing from the recipient end as well. So here is just a few future directions for future research, which obviously also reflects the limitations of the existing studies. So yeah, I mean, I look forward to like maybe discussing this over the Q&A session as well. So I guess now I would just give the floor back to Timo and welcome the questions and further discussions.
Well, thank you very much, Yifei, for your position and really also staying very much on time. Oops, microphone has to be moved. I would suggest that we use the raise the hand function to collect comments and questions. I think we are of a group size where this should be still feasible. When you do speak, please remember to then switch on your microphone, and then once you're done, please switch it off again. And if you don't mind, it would be great to see you when you're asking a question. The first hand went up already, and is Divakar, who wants to ask a question. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for this very interesting presentation. I was wondering if there was some notion of sort of comparing apples with oranges here, because as far as I understand, teachers' union play a big part in elections in India, and they are a very sort of strong organization. And I wonder your comment about consultation with teachers, that doesn't happen in Delhi, but happens a lot in Beijing. I wonder how you account for the effect that teachers' union have on, say, elections in Delhi and selection of the government in Delhi compared to the role that they would play in Beijing, or sort of a different kind of political economy. and that, I think, has a knock-on effect on a lot of other things that you sort of mentioned in your presentation. So I was wondering if you could respond to that in some way.
Timo, do you collect like a range of questions for me to respond centrally, or do I respond one by one? You're muted.
So far, it's the only question we have for the time being, so you can respond straight away. But otherwise, it might be good to collect a couple of if we do have multiple hands.
Okay, yeah, so thanks for your question, Diwakar. So, well, actually, I didn't like hear very clearly about the first part, but from what I gathered in a later part, so you're asking about the role of teacher union and how it plays up like in terms of the teacher consultation, etc. So I think, yeah, I mean, in the very beginning, I did like inquire a little bit about like the role of teacher union in general. But then later on, as you can see that like when we talk about the teacher capacity development and also with a specific focus on the teachers training and also the promotion. So actually the relevance of teacher union here, so far as these two activities are concerned, so like they actually does do not like play our very salient role here. So but I do remember coming across them like I think on 2 occasions. So to begin with, like when I shared about the grievances of especially the guest teachers, right? So I think one of the not the latest, but at least the policy development, like after this particular field work is done, which is at the end of 2017, is that there was this like a trend or the call for what is called a regularization of those guest teachers, right? Meaning that it does give them civil servant status as well, at least for those who has been like serving as a guest teacher already, like maybe for serving for a few years, so just after the exam. So that was, I think that this initiative is actually brought up by the teacher union. But at least I think the last time when I followed up on this issue, so well, and then it was brought to the government, right? So I think the AAP government like has already approved it and like pushed it forward. But then given the political turf war, if you wish, but also because the like lieutenant governor, in which this issue is for upon his jurisdictions, I think. So well, at that time, like it got stuck over there. So that is like one incidence in terms of the role of teacher union, and then the other instance of which the topic of teacher union was brought up is when I was interviewing the one government official as for like why they haven't even thought about like switching from the horizontal career promotion model towards the vertical model towards the horizontal model, which I think the answers at that time given by that politician is that like they were just using they were just referring to the teacher union, right? Saying that the teacher union actually wouldn't accept that, like, or they would oppose that. But I mean, that's just a standalone statement, because like whether or to what extent that you have done the consultation with the teacher union, like she wasn't able to like address that. So I guess that's the 2 incidences that has to do with teacher union that I remember. But I mean, overall, given a very specific focus on training and also on career advancement, so we do see limited engagement of teacher union.
Since there's no other hand up, I might want to follow up on that teacher union issue. What's the teachers union's position on training irregular teachers?
So their position on training irregular teachers, like maybe instead of this specific aspect, but more generally, I think like their position on the welfare of irregular teachers or guest teachers, right? So they would be in support of what is called regularizing their position, and as like meaning that like maybe the salary and also the other aspects such as training and such as the scope of promotion to be the same as the regular teacher, because so the status difference between the regular and versus the guest is that like even though they're doing the same work, but in terms of the salary, in terms of the training scope, and also like the scope of receiving other benefits and also promotion is actually quite substantially different. So the motion of regularization at least at the initial stage, I think it's raised by the teacher union and then also further accepted by the government, but then stuck in some kind of political conflict later.
But just when you mentioned that earlier in your presentation that irregular teachers aren't included in that training policy, to me, this sounded very much like insider-oriented policy, so kind of insider-outsider polarization. And it's quite interesting that you're saying that unions aren't actually pushing proactively for irregular teachers to be included in teaching, but then wants them to be regularized, which I can understand as a policy priority. Trade unions means the Italian trade unions responded in a very similar way to insider-outsider polarization. But of course, if that is not happening, how do you then represent effectively labor market outsiders? And it seems like the Indian unions, for the time being, don't have an answer to that. But I see Mary Alice has her hand raised, and I got another message that somebody else had the hand raised, but it doesn't show on my screen. But first, Mary Alice, please.
Okay. Hi, Yifei. That was really interesting. Thank you. I just wanted to ask, so I think maybe this is simplifying a bit from what you described, but like thinking about capacity in terms of capacity to make good policies and then capacity to implement those policies. I was just like wondering if you got a sense from your interviews of if the lower satisfaction in Delhi compared to Beijing was because they felt that the content that they were being trained in was not relevant to them, like the policy was just missing, or if they felt that it was just like the delivery and the kind of service of delivering the policy was the issue.
Yeah.
And since Lilia has a question, maybe we collect on this occasion two questions. Lilia, who sent a message that she had a question.
Yes,
please.
Yes. Hi. I was impressed with the number of the teachers that responded. The training didn't help them for the work. I think it was one of the first presentations. I'm not sure. It was like 90% for India and 50% for China. And I was wondering if you have any clue for this high level of answer, as the training course, maybe the training course content is not helping them for their daily practice in the classroom. Because this is in my country, in Brazil, this is the great question, especially when we say in training course, because many times universities, they are responsible for trainings, but they are not, and they bring all the high level discussion of the theory discussion, but they don't know how to discuss the practice. So I'd like to know if you have any clue for this high level of the answer.
Thanks for both questions. And I think, so Mary's question and Lilia's question are to some extent like related, which I think like maybe the best way is just to show these two figures. Yeah. So like this is the, well, like one good thing about like combining both the survey and also follow up with an interview is that like we gain a detailed picture about the reasons of dissatisfaction on training. So this is the picture for Delhi, and the second on the second page is the picture for Beijing. So if we look at this together, so I mean the reason why we are able to have this like content specific picture of Delhi is because so the training on subject content and then pedagogy and the teaching skill and then the student engagement and the parental involvement. So for each and every category, as you can see on the screen, the number of taking dissatisfaction and then like specifying the reasons of dissatisfaction is like quite large. So large enough to suffice all enable all these different figures, right? Whereas like the key difference here is that like for Beijing, actually, well, the number who expressed the detailed reasons for dissatisfaction on the content and the teaching skills, I mean, in total, it's just 15, whereas the rest of the content for each individual specific content, the number is not large enough. So that's why, like in the end, we have just to merge all of this in order to get like a number of 50, in terms of the counting. So that's why, like for Beijing, there's only this division between academic content, teaching skill versus all the rest. So that is the first thing that you can observe from this contrast. And then the second thing, so I think if you look at what are the specific reasons of their dissatisfaction, right? So in terms of the subject content and also on a parental engagement, right? So mostly more than 40% that would actually select that training content does not really match expectation, which I guess could be like one of the reasons behind like the figures that is commented by Lilia. Whereas like the other issues that are probably well, less salient, but also quite significant is like the frequency and the duration issues, right? So it ranged from nearly 20% to nearly 30%, whereas the quality to low is also like commented by quite a substantial number of people here. And this picture from Delhi, and if you can see, it's actually quite different compared with with Beijing. So basically, while in terms of the academic content and teachers' skills, so here it actually has like 33% as well. But I guess like the most important difference here is that you would see a substantially lower percentage of people would say that they are dissatisfied because of the issue of quality, right? Compared with the earlier picture of Delhi. However, despite the quality of the training, so people in Beijing would still feel, so actually it's the 33% here about, yeah, I didn't see the, well, I can like I'm a little bit colorblind after a while, but I think like a substantial number of people says that it does not help resolve the real world problems. And similarly, it would apply to the trainings on the rest of the contents as well. So in that case, I think the more salient issue expressed in Beijing is that even though like the training quality and like the delivery of the training is really good, but then like the next stage of issue is how do you really translate what you've learned from the training and apply it to your everyday practice. So this is like a more of a concern for the recipients in Beijing as compared with Delhi. So yeah, that's a detailed picture about about the reasons of dissatisfaction and also the variations amongst this. And I think like maybe also offer a follow-up discussion on the insider-outsider issue that Timo raised. Yeah, I think that's definitely like applying to the case of regularization as well. But I mean, if I remember correctly, so there could be some, well, because the regularization applies those guest teachers like who are already in a system and already like been teaching for a while, right? So in that, and if I remember correctly, there is an year duration imposed on that. Like I think it's 3 years, but I mean I can check back like on the news as well. So in that case, like so while on the one hand there is this insider outsider division between regular versus the guest, right? So in that, but on the other hand, you might also want to think about the guest teachers like who are already like in a system which is the target of like the regularization as a kind of like a partial insiders already. And this is kind of in contrast with another related phenomenon, which is the I don't know how to call it, like hiring freeze. So that's a paradoxical phenomenon because on the one hand, you can see that like a lot of the like teacher shortage, meaning that the posts that are yet to be fulfilled, right? But however, the fulfilling of this kind of vacancy post has not been going on like in a like a recent 2 or 3 years. So like in that case, it means that there is a lack of further or newly coming insiders. So like these two of the things like may or may not be related as well. So that's the comment offered on that.
Well, thank you very much, Yifei, for your very detailed answers. We had one more hand up, but I think that had been withdrawn in the meantime. So then, what allows me then to thank again Yifei for presenting here to us her very exciting research, and encourage you also, all of you, very much to join us again next week when we have a speaker from the US. Felice Garib will be talking on weather and migration and how combination and sequence of weather events does shape Mexican-US migration flows. Again, the very same time, Tuesday 5 to 6. And next week, Berkay will be sharing the event. So please, if you can, if you're interested, join us again for the seminar series. In the meantime, I wish everybody a good remainder of the week. Stay healthy, stay safe, socially distance, and we'll get through the term as well as we have been getting through the term so far. Thank you very much for being here, and take care. Winke, winke. And thanks, Yifei, very much for your presentation.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.